Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're talking about calculations with income. So in the previous video, I defined a lot of the different types of income we're going to be coming across in this topic. Now we want to actually jump in with some of these calculations relating to income. We're going to split it up into a few different bits, but for each of the examples, because this is something that a lot of you are really going to be thinking about in a few years once you start working, is that I want to put you in the driver's seat to imagine how you would be carrying out some of these calculations if you were, for example, comparing wages with salaries, if you had two job opportunities, for example, or if you needed to calculate the amount of money you'd expect to earn in a week. A lot of the textbook questions have like Ken earns an annual salary of this, or Georgie earns this. We're talking about you here. I want to put ourselves in the driver's seat because it's just more fun. So let's say you finish school and you are choosing between two jobs. So you have job 1 and job 2. Now, job 1 is a salary. Job 2 is a wage. With job 1, your salary is $59,735. And this has a 38-hour work week. So from Monday to Friday, you are working 38 hours. And here we're looking at, remember, a salary. So what does a salary mean? Well, that means you're getting $59,735 per year. So per year. Okay, now the second job is you want to work, for example, maybe part-time. Say this is like a full-time job. Say you said, okay, I don't really want to work that much. Maybe I'm at uni, maybe something else. I want to pick a job, or I have another option of a job with a wage. And this is, for example, a part-time job, like a retail job or something, or maybe you work in hospitality, and you earn $1.80 per hour. Now, you want to eventually work to figuring out which one of these has the higher rate of pay. So before we even do that, we are comparing two different types of rates here, right? We're comparing per year and we're comparing per hour here. So we kind of need these two speaking the same language, right? We need to some kind of way to figure out maybe who has the higher hourly pay or weekly pay or whatever. But in this question, it's going to be an hourly pay. So for question 1, we want to calculate the job 1 weekly pay. Weekly pay. Now, I'm making $59,735 per year. How can I find this per week? So we have 59,735 per year. Now, how many weeks are in a year? Well, we have 52 weeks in a year. So we can write this per year as per 52 weeks. And here we are putting on our rates hats again, the stuff we learned from year 8 rates and ratios. These are going to apply to working with these types of questions, because this is just a type of rate. It's some kind of quantity per another quantity. So if I wanted to find how much with this job I would earn per 1 week, so per week, how can I do this? Well, if we remember from rates, we can divide by the amount of weeks here, because in essence we're trying to get from 52 down to 1. So 52, I can get to 1 by dividing 52. Now, when I divide 59,735 by 52, that gives us approximately 1148, so $1,148.75 per week. Okay, so now here we are finished. So we've gotten a salary, which salary is always per year, and we want to find this per week. If we know there are 52 weeks in a year, we can divide by 52. So that gives us our weekly rate of pay, our weekly income, what we make at the end of each week. Now, for part B, we want to find which job has the higher hourly rate. And this is going to help us in our decision. Obviously, it's not always about the money. Sometimes other things with jobs come in hand, but we want to really figure out where we're at. How does one pay compare to the other? So we already know that job 2 is, was it 2180 per hour. Now, we figured out that job 1, we figured out what it was per week. That was 1,148.75 per week. Now, but how many hours did we say that this first job would require you to work in a week? Well, it says here 38-hour work week. So now we can figure out the hourly rate, because this job here, we can rewrite that as you're making 1,148.75 per 38 hours, because there are 38 hours in this working week for this job. And from here we can get to an hourly rate in the same way. Because we want to find out our rate of pay per hour, per 1 hour, so we can get 38 to 1 by dividing by 38. And I'm going to do that to the pay, because the pay is obviously going to get smaller because we are dividing. So if I divide 1,148.75 by 38, that gives me roughly $30.23 per hour. So job 1 pays off better. This is the job that we're going to make more money in. And we can do this by comparing the two rates at the same unit, at this per hour. Because these two, we're speaking a different language, right? We want to think of both rates, get them to the same type of quantity. We want to get this to money per hour. And then we can compare. And these are things that you will likely be doing when you get into the workplace. You may get a lot of different jobs. You want to compare which one is going to pay off more for you. So let's say you wanted to take a closer look at this second job. Maybe you don't want to work, maybe you don't want to work a full-time job, you want to work this casual job, and you just want to figure out how much money you would make. So how much money per year working 18 hours a week in job 2. So say there's something else that's come up and you're leaning towards job 2, and you say, okay, well, I want to start studying, or I want to be doing something else with my time, not just working full time. So I want to pick up this retail job, any part-time job, and the amount of time I have in the week to work is 18 hours a week. I want to find out, well, how much money am I going to have at the end of the year if I'm working roughly 18 hours each week? So we can calculate this relatively easily. So we have that you're making, I think it was $21.80 per hour, and you're working 18 hours in a week. So for each hour you're making $21.80. You can figure out your weekly wage by taking what you made per hour, $21.80, and multiplying it by the amount of hours worked. In this case, this is 18 here. And once you do that, you're going to find that you have made $392.40. But we're not finished yet. We found the weekly wage. We're trying to find out how much money we're making per year. So we want to first consider how many weeks are there in a year. Well, there are 52. So let me write that here. So there are 52 weeks in a year. And we want to find out then, if I make this much a week, how much will I make if I did this 52 times in a year? So we have here $392.40 per week, or 392.40 per week, and that means our yearly wage is going to be this amount, $392.40. And we're doing this because there's 52 weeks in a year, 52 times. So an easy way to figure this out would be to multiply this weekly wage by 52. And I wind up with $20,404.80. So that's a pretty good amount to take home, especially if you're working part-time. Now for this last bit, we're going to consider job 1 again, and we're just going to talk about calculating leave loading, because we talked about that in the previous video. So say in job 1, you were to take a 4-week holiday. You were to take a 4-week holiday on normal pay plus leave loading. Now, we want to find out how much will you be paid during the holiday. So, how much are you paid on holiday. So, once again, we need to consider, because we're going away for 4 weeks, so we want to consider what our weekly pay was with job 1. So, my weekly pay with job 1, that was 1,148.75 per week. So we want to find what I'm going to make for 4 weeks, because you're still going to get 4 weeks at your normal pay. So that means after 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks are going to pass, and the amount we're going to make is 1,148.75 multiplied by 4, because I'm finding the amount of pay for these 4 weeks. So that gives me a normal pay of 4,595 roughly. And here, this is just my normal pay. Let me actually label that. That's my normal pay. But I also want to think about leave loading. So my leave loading that I'm going to get here, loading plus normal pay, that's the total I'm getting. So my normal pay makes up 100% of my 4 weeks earnings. That's this value here, 4,595. And the leave loading is 17.5% on top of that. So my pay while I'm on holiday, is 117.5% of my normal pay of 4,595. And if you remember, when we're taking percentages of a quantity, this is all revision from the last year's material, I can get this by I can express this as a decimal. So my percentage I can write as a decimal, 1.175 times 4,595. And what I get after this is $5,399.13. Now this is rounded to 2 decimal places, and all of the calculations in this topic are going to be to 2 decimal places, because we're basically rounding all of these to the nearest cent. Okay, let's work through one more example. I won't talk too much about commission because I've done plenty of examples in the previous video, but let's look at calculating overtime. So, our next example, we are looking at calculating overtime. Okay, so you are in a job and you work some weekends and late nights along with the normal hours you work. So let's say you're at a job, you're working, so you work normal hours, and on top of your normal hours, you work extra weekends, late nights. And both of these are going to demand a little bit extra from your employer. So you have agreed on overtime pay arrangements. So overtime pay. These two fall under that. So for the next 2 questions, we are going to calculate how much you'd earn if you worked 16 hours during the week, during normal working hours, during the week, and this was at these 16 hours, the rate of pay is $18.50 per hour. So for a bit of revision, what type of pay would this be? Anything per hour? We're looking at a wage. So you're making a wage here. So you also work, in addition to these 16 hours, you work 6 hours on the weekend at time and a half. And a half. We want to calculate how much you have made this working week. So first, we're going to go with the easier thing to calculate, and that'll be this first one, our 16 hours at a normal rate, at your regular pay rate of $18.50 per hour. So what I'm going to do here is my normal earnings. So this is on weekdays. So your 16 hours at your working during the working week is your amount of money per hour, so $18.50. And we're doing this for 16 hours. So we're taking 16 lots of this pay that we've made. So you're timesing that by 16. And we end up with $296. This is how much you've made for the 16 hours. Now let's calculate, we have our normal earnings. Let's calculate our time and a half earnings. And a half earnings. This is for your weekend. Weekend hours you've worked. So you've worked 6 hours on the weekend. So remember, for time and a half, that means whatever we make for the hour, $18.50, we're going to multiply that by 1.5. So we're going to go $18.50 times 1.5. And we also want to, so this is our new rate here. Let's actually write that down underneath it. So this is our new rate. And now we're just considering, well, how many hours did we work at this new rate? That was 6 hours. So we're going to times this by another 6 hours. And what we end up with is $166.50. So this is our earnings on the weekend. But now we want to find the total amount of money we made that week. So what we're going to do is we want to take our 296 and add it to our 166.50. So our total earnings for the week, earnings in the week, is our 166.50 plus our $296. $6. And we wind up with, once we add those two together, $462.50 change. That is how you can calculate one of your week's earnings. Okay, so in the next question, we are going to be working backwards slightly. So let's say your hourly rate has been changed. Now, obviously, in the real world, you would be told what this is. But with this question, with maths, we can calculate a range of different things. So instead here, we are going to be given how much you've earned in the week, how many hours you've worked, and then what we expect your hourly rate to be. So your weekly earnings equals $507.50. And for this week, you have worked 9 hours at a normal rate. You have worked 4 hours at time and a half. Time and a half. And you have also worked 5 hours double time. So we have here that you've made $507.50 per some unknown amount of hours. So what we want to do here is we want to take these values, but we also need to consider the 2 overtime hours that you're being paid. So the money you're making for 4 hours at time and a half, that's the equivalent to if you worked 4 hours times 1.5 of 4. So we're finding 1.5 hours of these 4 hours, and for your 5 hours, it's like you worked double that. So for example, well, in this case, it's going to be 10 hours. So here we can find the total hours worked, or what we call the equivalent hours worked in the week. So these amount of hours at your different types of penalty rates, we call these as well, or overtime rates. So we can find the equivalent hours worked. So we have our 9 hours, and then to that we're going to add 4 hours at time and a half. So 4 hours multiplied by 1.5, taking 1.5 lots of 4, and then your 5 hours at double time, multiplying by 2 here. So our total hours is going to be here 25 hours. Okay, so that means that your 25 hours is the total amount of equivalent hours you would have worked here, because an hourly rate is just your normal rate per hour. These extra things, we want to find the equivalent amount of hours for that. So 4 hours at time and a half is equivalent to working 4 times 1.5 hours. 5 hours at double time is equivalent to working 5 times 2 hours. Now that we have this total, we know that we have made $507.50 per 25 hours. And now to find the hourly rate, because this is a wage here, so it's a rate per 1 hour. So this is per hour, or per 1 hour. So if we have 507.50 for 25 hours, finding that for 1 hour is going to be just dividing by 25. So if I divide 507.5 by 25, I get my new rate, my new hourly rate of $20.30 change. So that's a nice pay increase up from, I think it was $16 before, or $18.50. So this is how you can find your new normal rate, because you're dealing with equivalent hours worked. These times here, at time and a half and double time, they're equivalent to you working more hours, twice as many hours, or 1.5 times as many hours. But that is how we can start working with calculating income. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll catch you in the next one.